Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another Ingram Micro Technical Enablement webinar series. My name is Mark Miller, one of our senior technical enablement engineers. I'm very happy to be joined by Greg Hadley and Pedro Acosta from IBM to talk about IBM's innovative LinuxONE solution. We're going to dive a little bit deeper on how it can really drive efficiency, security, and sustainability for your client's business. So without further ado, Greg, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much for the introduction. Just to give an intro of my own, I'm Greg Hadley. I am the LinuxONE SME for our public market. I'm partnering with our business partners to bring the LinuxONE technology to the whole channels team across the United States. So I have Pedro Acosta, my technical counterpart, on as well. What we're going to run through is the LinuxONE platform, all of its benefits, capabilities, and how to really find opportunities within the various markets. So without any further delay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So for our agenda today, I'm going to take you through a LinuxONE overview, and then after that, I'm going to focus on our business focus areas for LinuxONE in 2025, which are VMware cost reduction, AI implementation, x86 hardware refreshes, security and compliance improvement, sustainability directives, and higher education. So just to jump into our LinuxONE overview, really, what is LinuxONE? So LinuxONE is the world's most powerful and secure Linux server. And the way I like to think about it is your traditional x86 servers that run Linux. As an alternative architecture, LinuxONE is a different server that you can run, right? And it's a little bit different. And I'm going to go through how that is. One of the major differences that we see, it's never been breached since its release in 2015. It's designed to run the entire Linux environment on one single box, and that's through our special processors, which I will refer to as the IFL, which is also going to be known as the core. So we have the fastest processor commercially available, the Telum processor, and with the LinuxONE 5, that is now Telum 2. In addition, as part of the Telum processor, we have on-chip AI accelerators to run AI in real time with very low latency. So just to recap, what is LinuxONE? Very large, powerful, and secure Linux server designed to run entire Linux environments on one box, scaling vertically as opposed to horizontally. It's imbued with the fastest processor that is commercially available, the Telum processor, which features some on-chip AI accelerators and some other neat things that I'll get into. So let's move forward to the history of LinuxONE. So in 2000, Linux became available for the S390X architecture. 2015, you saw the first LinuxONE release, and that's what I said before, never breached since its release in 2015. At that time, this is primarily for Ubuntu and data serving workloads. There's subsequent releases that you see cascading to the right. In 2017 was our LinuxONE 2. In 2019 was our LinuxONE 3. In 2020, we ported OpenShift onto LinuxONE and LinuxON Z. So that would be your Red Hat Red Times and IBM Cloud Paks for applications as part of 4.2 was available on LinuxONE. And in 2022 was the LinuxONE 4 that introduced the Telum processor. And coming in 2025, on May 6th of this year, we released LinuxONE 5. To give you an understanding of the product portfolio that we have for Linux, I'll have to go back to the LinuxONE 4 product portfolio because of these two that you see on the right. So our largest machine is known as the Emperor 4. We have a smaller version that has a maximum core count that's less or about 3/4 less than our largest machine. That would be the Rockhopper 4. And then we also have that in a rack mounted edition and an express edition as well. Now, the reason I mentioned the LinuxONE 4 releases is because currently only the enterprise class level machines have been released. However, we know that the smaller Rockhopper and Express versions will be available in the coming months. It's usually about a year away, but that's something to pay attention to as well. While our enterprise level machine has released, our smaller size mid-range and small size machines will be coming out in 2026. So I just mentioned the upgrade from the LinuxONE 4 to the LinuxONE 5. Really, what were the major changes that we made to this platform? Originally, the LinuxONE 4 scaled up to 200 cores per machine. Now we're looking at 208. In addition, we saw a memory increase up to 64 terabytes, which is a 60% increase. And then we also have a simplified I/O architecture with a double networking port density per I/O drawer, which is running at 5.5 gigahertz, topping our last edition, which was 5.2 gigahertz. And then we've increased the cache by 40% as well. And those are just some bits and bytes, things to know about really what's the difference between LinuxONE 4 and LinuxONE 5. But a lot of the benefits that we're going to go through and why businesses are leveraging them are going to be very similar whether you're on LinuxONE 4 or LinuxONE 5. Just some technical improvements that were made as well. So moving on to the benefits of LinuxONE, the business value. Now, I like to start on the left here, focused on cost. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to work my way around the circle and show, really how all of these things are going to tie back to cost. And LinuxONE, we like to say, is the most cost-efficient and secure hybrid cloud through a lot of these different areas, if you will, that we excel in. So I'm going to start right underneath that with availability. So you may have heard of, it has X number of nines of availability. Really what that means is it's the amount of downtime, unplanned downtime per year due to failures, hacks, and then also the amount of planned downtime per year as well when you're doing maintenance or upgrades or things like that. So due to LinuxONE's unique architecture and the way that it's constructed, we're able to achieve 8 nines of availability, which results in about 0.3 seconds of downtime per year. Now, I mentioned planned downtime, maintenance, upgrades. How is it that LinuxONE could stay running during those times as well? Because again, this is planned downtime. And the analogy I like to give is there's dynamic partition management within LinuxONE that allows workloads to be moved around as needed so that different areas can be updated and worked on as needed. So it would be like doing brain surgery on a patient while they're awake and talking to you. So even though, we're interacting with something that should cause downtime, in this case, we're able to continue to run because the ability to move things around as needed. And when we say immune to x86 security flaws in the bottom left, that would be one of those things as well. So when servers go down, they're down and they need to be replaced by another server, or something needs to be set up so that something else takes over. All of that happens inside of the LinuxONE machine automatically. And, in terms of cost, downtime has a cost every year for any business. So if you're able to minimize that, you're able to run for more time and get more value out of your hardware that you've acquired. Moving on to performance, I mentioned the fastest cores available, 5.5 gigahertz. LinuxONE is a machine that specializes at high I/O workloads. It handles data serving, application serving, and also anything networking extremely well. So those would be Oracle, Postgres, MongoDB. We also have a number of open source products that are supported, and also we have Java optimization as well. Another accelerator that we have in addition to our AI accelerator is our encryption accelerator. And what that allows us to do is to offload some of the encryption workload so that the cores can scale vertically without being impeded by, encryption. That would be similar for I/O and networking as well. The ability to offload those to specialized parts of the core so that the IFLs, the cores themselves, running the production workload can continue to scale vertically up to 100% without any bottlenecking. So, if you're able to run faster with better performance, with a better optimized hardware, that means you're going to be able to process more transactions, more workload overall, which ultimately will get you more value for the system that you're using, or get businesses more value for the system that they're using. So that's performance. Moving on to confidential computing, I mentioned Never Breach since its release in 2015. We have quantum safe level encryption on this system, which means that the data that's being used, let's say for a production workload, while it's sitting in the storage, it's going to be encrypted. While it's passing over the network, it's going to be encrypted. And then while it's actually being used and accessed by the application, it's going to be encrypted as well. So that's 100% encryption, we like to say at rest, in flight, and in use. And one of the other security features that are available via CPAC-F and secure execution is the ability to isolate different workloads, data, and containers all from each other. So if one area is breached, or if an area goes down, that's totally isolated. And whether that's on the LinuxONE platform itself or something that the LinuxONE is connected to, like another x86 server or something like that. So the ability to isolate those so that if any issues or things happen, there's no negative impact on the other pieces of the environment as well. And that also really speaks to the availability as well. And that's how that's achieved. If you look at it the other way, the ability to isolate so that if you need to make a specific change, that change can be made without impacting the rest of the system. Last here on security, and something that you hear all the time, are the certifications. So FIPS 140-2 is a very exclusive security certification that we have. Additionally, ELA 4 and 5. These are the ones that are most prominent and popular. That's why they're on the page. However, there is a whole page that I could give of all the different certifications. There are a ton. Not getting breached, not having data compromised, not having downtime, those all contribute to saving cost over time. I know that the average cost of a data breach today is something like $9 million, and average time to detect the data breach is 272 days. So with that type of cost in today's day and age of data, being able to prevent those is more of a hidden cost or a hidden savings, but it truly is a game changer in the long run. Moving on to scalability, and this kind of goes with all the different things we've been talking about, is the ability to run thousands of workloads per system and be able to scale vertically as opposed to horizontally. So with LinuxONE, when a client finds a new machine that they're interested in, they can get a 100-core machine and only have 15 cores turned on. Now, no, they're not going to be paying for those other 85 cores, but in the event that they need them, simply by installing microcode on their machine, which can be done remotely, they can turn on additional cores as needed instead of having to bring in a new rack or have more server sprawl horizontally. We're able to scale vertically within the machine as well. And then on top of that, using virtualization and containerization, we're able to run thousands of different kinds of workloads all at once concurrently on the same machine with no bottlenecking, network issues, or performance degradation. So, I like to say all those different things first. The last one here is sustainability. LinuxONE, because it has faster cores, it's more efficient. The I/O networking offloading allows the cores to consume much less energy than x86 servers. And in this case, you see as part of this cost tab, we have 75% lower data center footprint and 50% lower power envelope. That's the ability to scale vertically instead of sprawl outward, and being able to utilize 90 to 100% of your hardware as opposed to x86, which is traditionally somewhere between 5 to 25% utilization. So you're getting a lot more out of the hardware that you're using in your data center. So all those things combined traditionally contribute to our 52% lower TCO over 5 years. And this is really driven by the ability to consolidate from many cores on x86 onto less cores on LinuxONE, achieving the performance, the security, and the overall cost structure benefit via the software licensing, which I'll get into later as well. On average, we see a 13-to-1 core consolidation ratio from x86 onto LinuxONE. So in this case, the example for that would be if you have 10 x86 servers that are 4-core servers, that would be 40 cores total. If you say, let's say the average was 10-to-1, we'd be converting down to 4 IFLs, 4 Linux cores, and 4 Linux cores out of the maximum being 208, you can see how that could really start to scale really well, where at the maximum of, let's say, 200 cores, you would effectively be able to support 2,000 x86 cores across however many physical racks that would take up. So all of these things combined, we're looking at a much lower TCO over time. And I'm going to get into, more in detail. How do we achieve that lower TCO? What are the workloads that are best fit for Linux One and see the most reduction? So let's move into that. So our best fit workloads, I mentioned before, data serving, application serving, high IO workloads. As you can see here on the left for data serving, DB2, Cloud Pak for Data, MongoDB, Oracle, Postgres. As far as these databases, most of them with other than MongoDB are core-based licensing products, right? So if you look at, in this case, having 100 cores versus 10 cores and being able to leverage sub-capacity pricing for your software, like for example, Oracle is one of the main use cases that we have for this, would be able to reduce that licensing by 90%. And we have some success stories that I can show as well. And that would be similar for your application serving, MQ, Hazelcast, Open Liberty, Kafka, Cloud Paks, the Apache suite, WebSphere, OpenShift, and things like that. So lots of different options. And any of those workloads that are able to leverage the various accelerators and offloaders that we have on Linux One are going to see a significant reduction in licensing and a significant improvement in performance. Now, these aren't the only use cases that we support on Linux One. There's a number of others that work extremely well. That would be our Red Hat ecosystem, OpenShift, Ansible. RHEL is one of the primary distributions that are available in addition to Ubuntu and SUSE. Also real-time AI, which I'm going to get into in more detail. And then we also have a number of ISVs that we support across financial services, healthcare, states, universities. So that would be another area as well. And then also our IBM products, Maximo, Instana, Flexera, Turbonomic. Those are also great fits for Linux One. And then the last piece of that is our open source ecosystem. We have an ISV team that's dedicated to porting new software applications onto our platform. This is a little bit outdated. I think there's a number more than this now, but we have a team that's dedicated to validating and bringing on new software. So in the case that something isn't supported, there's still be an opportunity potentially to port that over along with the opportunity that you're investigating. Moving on from here, I was going to show a couple examples of really how this consolidation works. Right, I've showed you what Linux One is. I've showed you a couple of different benefits that really tie to a more secure, cost-efficient, and better performing platform. And now, really, how does it look? Right, what do the numbers look like? And this is from this is real examples from customers who have worked with us to, number one, complete the study, right, which is how we got the data. And then number two, actually go through, implement the solution and realize the savings. So this is a financial customer, and the workload that they're looking at is Oracle, which I mentioned, and then WebSphere as well. So this is 60 x86 servers, right? Remember, I mentioned you could have 10 servers with 10 cores each on them. This is 60 x86 servers with 2009 cores, and that consolidated onto 7 Linux One Rock Hoppers with 133 IFLs total, which results in a 15:1 core consolidation ratio if you go from that 2009 down to 133. As for the TCO reduction, we saw 53% lower with Linux One. And again, this is over 5 years, and the ultimate savings number on that was 23.5. So you can see here on the right-hand side, the different colors that we have. So in the orange, that's the software licensing. So you can see software licensing on x86, much more significant than on Linux One. And then in addition, you can see our hardware costs and the other costs in here, or you can't even see the colors anymore for Linux One. So this also resulted in an ROI of 300%. And, as for software licensing consolidation, as soon as you're paying for less licenses, or you need to renew your licenses and you're renewing less licenses than you were before, those savings are from day one, as opposed to, there isn't anything you need to do to achieve those savings. As soon as you're running with less licensing, those are savings you'll achieve. And in this case, it was 77% lower software licensing cost than on x86. The next example I wanted to show is for OpenShift. So OpenShift is another workload, or OpenShift workloads are another great fit for LinuxONE. Red Hat Enterprise Linux is fully supported on LinuxONE. That's one of the available distributions. And then, leveraging the, better performing cores along with the networking and other things that we talked about. In this case, we saw 68.9% lower TCO compared to x86. So in the case that a customer is interested specifically in OpenShift workloads, and as you can see here, the software cost is very significantly different. Paying for OpenShift on top of your database or data serving workload, that's going to have a much higher licensing if you're paying for 100 cores versus 10, right? So it's pretty straightforward, but anywhere that it's core-based licensing supported on LinuxONE, there's an opportunity for software licensing reduction. So moving on, just to give you guys an idea of what does it actually look like to re-platform these workloads, how would they potentially move on to LinuxONE? So the current state that we would be working with our customers would be on the left. So there's x86, multiple racks of servers across bare metal, virtualized, containerized, even cloud. Then we'd be looking at moving those workloads, re-platforming them, modernizing them onto LinuxONE. So as you can see, there's multiple different verticals here, and you can see all the different types of workloads that we're looking to support. And then you can see that they're all sitting together on one LinuxONE machine. And just to give you an idea of the different parts, we would have a firmware-based hypervisor, then we'd have our operating system. You could also run bare metal as well. Then we could have our infrastructure as a service, our automation layer. If you wanted to do containerization, you could also have a platform as a service layer, and then all of the workloads that we would want to support as well. So this is kind of like a sample architecture for what it would look like to support all of those different kinds of workloads on LinuxONE. So this kind of sums up my LinuxONE overview. Took you through, what really is LinuxONE, what are the capabilities, show you some examples of where clients have leveraged them and actually taken advantage of it, and then what would it look like to go from one platform to another. The next thing I'm going to walk you guys through is for the business focus areas. This is really, the LinuxONE platform, based on all the things that you say, I don't want to say it speaks for itself, but there's a ton of amazing capabilities. That's clear. That's undeniable. The question is, how do we find the right groups within a business to have the right conversation, ultimately to identify budget that aligns with the value that LinuxONE can provide? And that's what I'm going to go into next. So this is what I've labeled as our business focus areas for LinuxONE. So this would be, dynamic events or key events that are going on, or things we know people care about. So let's start with VMware. This is probably the one you've heard the most, VMware cost reduction. If you look at, the licensing core consolidation that we looked at, VMware isn't something that you can run on LinuxONE. So you couldn't say, I'm going to consolidate my VMware licensing and run on LinuxONE. You'd need to switch hypervisors. But even when you're switching hypervisors, let's say you're switching to OpenShift virtualization, instead of running 1,000 cores and paying for 1,000 cores of OpenShift virtualization, or in this case OpenShift, you would only be paying for 100. So it acts as a great first step for a business that's looking to get away from VMware to invest in a very cost-efficient platform, right? So there's going to be budget that's assigned to getting away from VMware. This is an extremely cost-efficient, secure platform that workload can just be moved over to and kind of piled onto as needed to move away from that x86 space. So there may be, may happen over time, but initially, if you're able to move, let's say you have a huge Oracle environment running on VMware, you could move that onto LinuxONE running KVM, see significant reduction in your VMware costs, you had all the other benefits that we talked about as well. And now you have this platform, that just creates opportunities for cost reduction that you can move other workloads to as needed. That's really supported and driven by your data serving workload that's moved over, and that savings that we're seeing from the software licensing consolidation. And I also have a sheet one pager throughout this. I have a couple of one pagers that I'll share, and then I'll also send out as part of this. This is our VMware reduction roadmap. So at the IBM team, IBM LinuxONE team, it works with our IT economics team to conduct studies. And one of the studies that we're able to do is for VMware. So I just want to preface this. If this is something that's interesting to you, I would reach out to your IBM LinuxONE specialist for your specific region or geography, and ask them about this and engage with them, because they'll be able to connect you with the IT economics team and start doing this VMware reduction study. So this is a no-cost study. What we do is we assess a client's current Linux environment and determine what are the potential savings within that environment. In this case, for VMware, quantifying what are the different workloads that we could move over, what would be the savings, both moving away from VMware and reducing the software licensing consumption of that workload. And then, we create a report. And an example of that you see in the bottom left here. So this is, pretty quick for the data collection. They send over the data. We work with the team to work through it. This would be with your IBM LinuxONE specialist as well. And then, this report is available and actionable. So typically they'll will conduct the report, then we'll be able to create a number of things from that. We'll be able to create a migration plan that has workload prioritization, target environment requirements. We'll be able to create timelines, and just this is something that is available to be taken advantage of, and is no charge to the client. A great way to get your foot in the door, to have this, hey, well, what about VMware conversation? I'm sure everybody is concerned about it. And I also included another CCO example, just to give you guys an idea. Again, looking at the software savings, right? Orange versus the orange on the left side, we're seeing 12-to-1 core consolidation ratio. So effectively, we're paying for 12 times less cores for this Oracle workload. The last thing I wanted to share is the different virtualization options that we have available on LinuxONE. So this is our LinuxONE core stack for virtualized workloads. I'm not going to go through it all, but looking at our hypervisor layer, the available virtualization hypervisors would be KVM, ZVM, and then I wanted to specifically mention OpenShift virtualization is currently in technology preview and will be available soon. So that's, if that's the way that they want to go, that's another option as well. Okay, moving on to AI implementation. So I mentioned before, LinuxONE is an extremely energy efficient platform. And what we see today with the increase in volume, really, of the amount of GPU training and GPUs that's going on. A typical NVIDIA GPU is 750 watts. A comparative LinuxONE workload would be 75 watts. And this is specifically for AI inferencing. So what I'm trying to say is AI is going to take up a ton of energy. And there's some things that you can do specific to AI on LinuxONE, and there's some things that, wouldn't be able to be supported. We don't have a GPU on LinuxONE. However, building an energy reserve where a customer knows that in the future they're going to be investing a significant amount of money, right? And a part of that money would be energy in building out and implementing AI. That project is going to have a significant increase in their energy consumption. And what we see businesses doing is taking advantage of other areas in their business. And maybe that's AI inferencing. Maybe it's consolidating their data serving workloads. Maybe it's consolidating their other Java applications onto LinuxONE to create an energy reserve that's available to be tapped into when that Gen AI piece is project kicks off, right? So I just wanted to mention that that is a potential strategy that we have to have those conversations. On top of that, with the Linux 1.5 release, AI was really a focal point of the platform. With the previous release of the Linux 1.4, we had the Telum processor, which included the AI accelerators. Now coming to the newest platform, Linux 1.5, we have Telum 2 and we have the Spire accelerator. And the Spire accelerator is suited for Gen AI. So, that's also something that we will be able to engage in this round of Linux 1. So I'm just going to go through some of the benefits that we see, extremely low latency for your high volume workloads, able to integrate AI into your existing environments, having accurate models, being able to support the compute requirements for Gen AI, that would be with the Spire card, energy consumption related costs, this would be another strong point, and then security and governance. So with the security piece, we went through all the different security features of Linux 1. That would also be applied to an AI pipeline with the isolation capabilities and secure execution. So just as a quick overview, and then we'll move into some of the other AI features that we have. So extremely low response time for millions of inferences per second. So, to me, this immediately makes me think banks, healthcare, who's going to be doing, a ton of inferences and needs low response times. And then in addition to that, I mentioned before, 83 less power than x86 AI workloads. And this is specifically for the inferencing piece, right? As far as training goes, training would need to be done on a GPU, but the inferencing piece can absolutely be done on Linux 1 and can be an additional feature or capability for a Linux 1 machine that's in a business. And what I'm trying to say there is it could support the data serving workloads, the mission critical workloads. And part of those IFLs are reserved for doing the AI inferencing of a larger AI pipeline that either starts or ends on x86. In here as well, we have a couple of different use cases: advanced fraud detection, anti-money laundering, insurance claims processing. These are a couple of things that I just mentioned. A couple other ones as well that I'll just leave in here for reference later on in the interest of time. One thing I do want to call out, and this would be another time to engage your IBM Linux 1 specialist for your geography, is we have a Linux 1 AI discovery workshop. So what this workshop is our AI for Linux 1 team will meet together with you and the client and discuss potential use cases that could be leveraged on Linux 1 based on what they currently have, based on where they want to go, based on where their strategic goals are. This is a great no charge option to really get our foot in the door, start understanding what's important to the client as it pertains to infrastructure that supports the AI project that they absolutely are either starting off already or looking to start in the future. So this is a great opportunity. Again, this would be something that you would work with your Linux 1 specialist for as well. Okay, moving on. So x86 hardware refresh. This is my favorite one. I take us back to our original slide. So kind of all the different areas that we talked about outside of AI and outside of maybe other couple special use cases, the value of Linux 1 is centered around x86 consolidation, which is to say improving the cost efficiency, security, and performance of that x86 Linux environment and being able to fully take advantage of the Linux 1 platform's capabilities to really improve that whole workload and environment really as a whole. So I'm going to move off of x86 refresh. That's really what a lot of what we're talking about, and I've mentioned a couple times as well. Moving on to security and compliance improvement. So this is another one pager that I have for security compliance. Unbreachable enterprise grade infrastructure. Like I mentioned before, never breached since its creation in 2015. We mentioned the certifications that we have, the FIPS 140-2. That's very hard to find for hardware in today's day and age. EAL 4 and 5 are the highest levels of security standards available currently. And this is really powered, like I mentioned, by our secure execution and CPAC-F. We're able to isolate different workloads and be able to prevent, things lateral movements between applications, and the impact of breaches in other systems, other environments impacting our environment. So, and then in addition, security is another area we could leverage the on-chip AI accelerator for real-time fraud detection. This would relate mostly to financial services clients, and then being able to separate sensitive customer data with military-grade isolation would be across all business types as well. And then one other thing I wanted to have in here towards the bottom is, why are businesses leveraging LinuxONE? So there's a couple of real use cases that I want to call out. Some of these are not public. So we have a central state IT department. They use LinuxONE Rockhopper for their data serving workloads to consolidate and reduce their costs and improve their security. And in this case, this is one I've personally worked with. They've looked at x86 as an option a number of times, done IT economic studies, and LinuxONE continues to be the most cost-efficient platform for them now and in the future. Another one we have is a large healthcare provider who's providing a hosting service for other businesses within their business. So they have a LinuxONE machine, and they're able to use that ability to scale vertically to add microcode to be able to turn on additional IFLs as they want to take on a new payment system or a new claims processing or something like that. So that's another option that we see as well. And then the last one I have on here is New Hampshire DHHS. This is a public reference. They're running their social services application on LinuxONE, which supports 20% of their citizens. And it's really critical for them to have the 8 nines of availability and meet their compliance needs as well. So the reason I called these 3 out, or these are all businesses that security and compliance issues could really impact negatively and are most likely to have challenges in those spaces. So that's states and healthcare. And then of course, financial services and things like that would be other options as well. But these are the ones that I've called out. Moving away from security, I'd like to talk back about sustainability and just give you guys an example. This is a European financial institution. Just letting everything load here. So they did an Oracle consolidation, and one of the key benefits that they were interested in and that motivated them to move forward was the ability to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. So what we see here is 70% of CO2 emission reduction, and that's really from being able to consolidate and reduce the amount of floor space that they're using, their server sprawl, more efficient energy. But just as a real life example of this is really what's possible. And again, this is an Oracle reduction, 15-to-1 core consolidation ratio, which resulted in 60% software licensing reduction. So another example of both that financial and sustainability or business driven or business goal benefit as well. So that kind of 2-pronged approach. The last one I have here is one that may be a surprise to some people. As the LinuxONE public SME, I've spent a lot of time in the higher education space. So we've done a lot of new things there that you may not have heard of. So we do have 2 universities using LinuxONE for research or public references. I personally have hosted 3 higher ed LinuxONE events where they have come and spoken about their research, all of which, those recordings are available as well. If you reach out to your LinuxONE specialist, they will be able to get you those recordings and what those events were. But one is the University College of London. Dr. Owain Kenway from the Advanced Research Computing Center is using LinuxONE for medical imaging. And in this case, he set up a cancer image detection pipeline where the model was trained. Again, the model was trained on another platform. It was trained on x86 using the GPU. What we're talking about on LinuxONE is something different. Now that your model is trained, we're going to port that over to LinuxONE via ONNX. We're going to run the model there, and we're going to process our images through that model. And that's the inferencing piece. And really the reason why the University College of London was so interested in taking advantage of LinuxONE was the security aspect. They're dealing with PII and PHI from the images of the patients who are, being analyzed in this case. So the ability to, be sure that there's going to be no issues there, or there's nothing's going to be compromised, was a huge benefit to this department and they continue to look for opportunities where there's PHI, PII, sensitive information that they can leverage this platform for. And then the other angle would be the sustainability angle as well, being able to have the most cost efficient platform through their energy consumption as well. And I'm sure the recording that they have does a lot more justice, but that's a quick overview. And then the other one that we have is Toronto Metropolitan University. This is Dr. Anatoly Gruzd, and he's working on social media research. And for all intents and purposes, what's being done here is an extremely large scale data analysis. So this is, for a social media platform, collected 309 million posts across 33,000 channels, and then created a visualization of a map that kind of shows really who's the main channel that's pushing the story, right? Who's everyone else referencing? But just to show as an example of, an AI and machine learning application. In this case, this was machine learning, again, using ONNX and PyTorch. So this was another example of a research application of LinuxONE. And in this case, it was for its ability to handle large amounts of data, process things quickly and efficiently. So one pager that I have that I want to leave with you guys is our LinuxONE community cloud. And this is for a space where I've been working pretty extensively. So what we're starting to do is set up partnerships, collaborations with universities to allow them to leverage the LinuxONE platform. So at Marist College, in New York, we have a couple of LinuxONE machines that are set up to be accessed by university staff and students free of charge. So you can see here on the left, free 120-day access at a time. It's really simple to log in, deploy your servers, and then connect. This is something I've done personally. I've worked with a number of universities, professors, to get them access as well. And really, the application that we see is, or where we're seeing that universities are using this platform is for capstone. They're using it in the classroom, anywhere that they would instead be using some AWS Linux type service. This is another option for them as well. And it really helps us to get our foot in the door and have more conversations about the infrastructure that they use to support their university and ultimately identify some of those other areas of budget that we talked about, whether that's AI, I guess in this case, VMware would be another one as well, cost reduction, those would all be areas. But this has been, extremely popular with the universities, given that it is free. So this would be another opportunity for you to reach out to your LinuxONE sales specialist. I have my contact info in the bottom right here. I would also be happy to help with this as well. So this is I think this is everything that I have for today. I'm going to go to the thank you slide. Just to recap, so we went through what is the LinuxONE platform, where are the areas of value that we see businesses leveraging it, how are they leveraging it, what does that actually look like, and then how do we find new areas of business, new budget, new strategic goals, and then really what do we have to support the LinuxONE story in those different areas. So with that, from start to finish, I'm sure anyone who's watching this should be able to identify a LinuxONE opportunity right off the bat that they know of, that something that's going on that they've heard. So I've provided some valuable information. Again, my name is Greg Hadley. I'm your LinuxONE SME. My contact information is somewhere on here. It is on the last slide as well, but I appreciate everyone's time. And please, with any questions, reach out to your LinuxONE SME. Let us be a resource for you. Let us help you out with any documentation you need. And let's make some magic happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Greg. That was really excellent. And I do encourage you to reach out to myself, Mark Miller, or Cheryl Thompson as well. We'll be able to connect you with the right IBM resources so you can discuss this awesome solution with your clients. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.